Hey guys, welcome back. Today we're back in the nightmare and making the Orphan of Kos. Not that one, but this one. The bald-headed, screamy, slashy boy standing on the beach and trying to catch a tan. Now this STL is from Eldritch Promethean, who sent me a bunch of his files a while ago, including the Gale that I've done previously, so check him out on Instagram. I'll leave a tag in his description. He's got a lot of 3D printing goodies going on. So first things first, we need to get it primed, which I'll do with some black, and then on top of that, a zenithal prime of grey sear. So there we are, let's get painting. So just starting off with this buggy pinky weapon with all its positively pungent pustules, and I'll get it based with some dark pinky flesh tones and just keeping it thin so you can retain some of that nice shade coating underneath, and just tickle some pink onto the lovely little umbilical cord as well. And then I'm just adding in some of the Reichland flesh shade onto the pink to just give some of that darky fleshy contrast that'll just seep nicely into all of the little crevices, and it's looking pretty nasty. Now we can get to basing the main body, which is pretty much just grey, so I'll paint it grey. So this fella has been ranked time and time again as Bloodborne's hardest boss. Now I'm no master Souls player who runs Souls level 1 playthroughs, but this dude was nowhere near as much as a challenge as I thought he would be, especially compared to a boss like Lawrence. I just kind of parried and dodged this guy and took him down in 2 or 3 tries, but Lawrence, ooh, I remember him taking me upwards of 20 tries to beat. With the grey base done, we can move on and highlight him up with some lighter grey, keeping it thin again, and then once applied we can take a glaze of that colour just to blend between the two tones. Now I'll say he definitely isn't a simple boss, the rapid moveset and speed at which he fights, especially if you aren't, parrying it, can be pretty problematic, especially when he goes apeshit in phase 2 and starts flying all around the area. However, I kind of found that Lawrence is more challenging because he's more unpredictable and the moves are so drunkenly chaotic that I just constantly got burned by him. I don't know, let me know in the comments below how you rank Lawrence versus the Orphan as harder or easier. Now with the light grey done, I can move on to painting in some white highlights in the lighter grey just to give us some nice white shine, and again blending between the tones with some glazes. And once the highlights are done, I'm adding in some contrast to this baldy boy, beefing up the shadows with a mix of dark blues and blacks, just tucking these dark shades into areas where light won't be affecting it and kind of hidden away little creases and nooks. Nice, he's looking like a real great one. So I'm going back over the putrid pustules on the weapon with the original pinky colour to bring back our mid-tone over the dark wash, to which I can then start highlighting with brighter and brighter flesh tones to give some shape and dynamism to each little boil. Boil, boys, fire, boys. Then just some red contrast on top will give us some nice bloody glaze, which will settle nicely into the deeper regions. And then just some dark brown contrast will give us a bit of grime around the weapon. And then again, just continuing painting up those brighter fleshy tones onto the bubbles to brighten the centres up. Now for the actual blade part, I'm just going to do some basic NMM to it, starting by basing it with some medium grey, and then adding little staggered pockets of black and blending in some grey brownish tones into it, just to give us that bit of metallic colouring within the grey. From there I can just start mapping out the little white pockets between the darker tones to give us that metallic shine. Now I'm fairly certain this part of the weapon is an actual metal blade, I'm not 100% sure, the reference imagery I gathered for it seems to be that, and fighting it in game it does have some metallic reflections coming off of it, so I think it's metal, so we're just going to go with that. Once done with the blade I can then just start slapping on the lovely coagulated blood on it to give us that ooey gooey bloody goodness. And lovely, one orphan done. That's a weird sentence. Now time for a base. I had a general idea in my head that I wanted the orphan on a raised rocky ridge above a rocky beach below, so I'm going to try and emulate that picture in my brain with some foam blocks here. and just going to hot glue these different size blocks onto a thin sheet of wood, and we've got a basic Minecraft blocky base. Now I can just start cutting away at the blocks to give us some rocky textures. Once done with that, I can rip little bits out with my fingers to create some interesting shapes and then just wipe away the excess to save for later. Now, just lather on some PVA glue and start piecing in the little leftover rocks and little odd shapes that I had lying around just to be our rocky texture. Kinda just mixing it all around with no real rhyme or reason, building it up in areas for some random looking rock formations around, just to kind of add some interest to the big blocky thing. And now with our gluing complete, it's time to paint it, starting with a base coat of Mod Podge and black acrylic, then a coating of grey, then a brown layering and wash, then an ochre layering and wash, some white highlights, and a black wash to tie it all together, and finally a highlight dry brushing for added light and dynamism. And there's my little rocky beachy base. It's more rock than beach, but you know, when you live in England, that's what you get. Now there's something missing from this. I need something to go on here, something to make it more interesting so it's not just rocks, but I don't know what. I think I'm just going to do some light reading for a minute and try and find some inspiration. Ah, good old Junji Ito, he's always packed full of ideas. Yeah, this looks interesting. Ah, a beautiful snail person. That's exactly what I need. Let me just grab that real quick. Ah, perfect. Just what I need. A bloodied snail person from the fishing hamlet. Thanks, Junji. But I need more. Luckily, they spawn pretty quick. So let's get these little escargot folk dotted around on our rocks to liven it up a bit. Not really liven, they're a bit freaky looking. To freak it up a bit. That looks pretty good. This dish will run you about 20 euros in a French restaurant, I reckon. So let's glue these sluggy suckers in place, and now we can get the big baldy boy put atop, looking down on them all. Wonderful. So all I want to do to finish this off is add some water to it, so I'll start by crudely masking off the sides to create a little boundary, to which I'll fashion a terrible little jib with some thin wood around it to create some walls. Once done with that, I can now measure out some clear epoxy resin with some hardener at a 1:1 ratio and mix it all up nice and good. And just begin pouring it in. After leaving it for a few hours to cure, I can come back, rip apart this shitty jig, and we can take a look at our final piece. There it is, the Orphan of Kos looking down upon the fishing hamlet snail folk trying to crawl up to him. That was a pretty fun one to do. I really loved doing the Bloodborne bosses. So, you know, let me know below what Bloodborne bosses you'd like to see next and I'll see about doing it. But for now, thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, please be sure to drop this video a like, drop me a comment, say hi, and hit that subscribe if you haven't already. Now just time for some beauty shots, and I'll see you all next week.
Some say cosmic. Do you hear our prayers? No, we shall not abandon the dream. The nightmare swirls and chills none ending. Grant us eyes. Eyes on our bruised clothes, beastly idiocy. The round lake of the moon, hidden now from sight. The cosmos of course.